Welcome in, everybody. So good to be in this space with you. So, today I am coming on live from California, actually. So, I'm here traveling for work, but also enjoying the scenery. And I am in my hotel room, as you can see, but I figured I would pop on and talk to you guys about some integration conversations. Today's topic is going to be on self abandonment and how healing this wound really required me to become difficult. We're going to be jumping into all things concerning showing up for ourselves, right? So, I recently kind of realized that when women start to ask for what they need, they become labeled as difficult. And in our culture, it seems that we are being raised this way. So I know for me, as a child, growing up, I was always called a good girl or a compliant kid, or I was the quiet one, so I was always labeled as the good one, right? So conditioning for me personally was being a good girl was equated with not having needs, essentially, right? I grew up in a household with a lot of neglect, so having needs wasn't safe. If I were to voice one of my needs, there was a chance of being rejected. There was a chance of people not showing up for me. So it almost became easier to deny that I had needs in the first place, right? So my conditioning happened around becoming easygoing, not asking for what I need, being afraid to ask for what I need, and and not being comfortable asking for what I need because there was that fear of rejection or abandonment, right? So I went into a space of being low maintenance. But what ends up happening in that space is I wasn't showing up for myself, okay? I wasn't honoring and owning my own needs, my own boundaries, my own beliefs. I wasn't showing up for myself, right? And the cost of self abandonment is disrespecting the self, is not having respect for the self, low self esteem, right? And when we can start to move into a space of believing that we are worthy of having our needs met, that's when we can start to voice these things and actually get our needs met, right? The the consequence of not voicing our needs and asking for our needs to get met is they never get met, right? And a huge part of relational satisfaction is co meeting needs. It's co-meeting needs, being witnessed, being seen, having people be there for us and hold space for us and do things for us, and equally, doing those things for other people, right? And that's a deeply fulfilling part of being human, is meeting relational needs with somebody else, right? And also, when we're not being honest about our own needs, we are generally attracting people who can't meet them as well because we're being avoidant of our own needs. We're attracting people who are also avoidant, okay? because everything in our reality is a reflection of who we are, is a reflection of the beliefs we hold about ourselves. And if we're not emotionally available to ourselves, then we are not going to attract partners who are emotionally available, right? We're when we're avoidant with ourselves, we're attracting people who are also avoidant into our reality, okay? How else would we become aware of something if it wasn't being shown to us? This is actually a gift that the universe has given us. Is this law of reflection, okay? Everything is a mirror. So, like I said previously, a lot of us, we weren't rewarded for authenticity. We were rewarded for being a good girl, for being compliant and quiet and sweet and nice, right? So um, there wasn't a lot of reward for actually speaking up for ourselves. So, this is where that belief was formed that our needs don't matter, that other people's needs matter more than our own. And that is just not the truth. And once we can start to transform this belief, that's when our behaviors will start to change. Everything always starts at a belief level, okay? And we can start to give ourselves what we need by self holding and really just like comforting that inner child who learned that her needs don't matter, okay? We can start to tell ourselves, like gently rocking back and forth, we can tell ourselves, our needs do matter. I'm listening to you. I want to hear what you have to say. Things that we should have heard from healthy parental figures, from healthy aunts and uncles, other people in our lives that we didn't actually receive that mirroring from, we need to start giving that to ourselves. And that's how we start to transform the belief from the inside out by meeting that need for ourselves first. So, because when our nervous system learns that expressing needs creates conflict or rejection or emotional withdrawal, then we don't actually feel safe asking for what we need, right? But we can start to internalize that those things are safe, that we are deserving of having our needs met. And if somebody cannot receive our needs, then that is somebody who is not worthy of being in our lives, okay? Mm. So, for me personally, for a very long time, I was emotionally avoidant of my own needs. And what that looked like was attracting men who were also emotionally avoidant, like I said before. I would meet a guy who was interested in me maybe sexually, but not wanting to invest in me long term, right? And I would go into this space of limerence where my needs were getting met. I would imagine that this was the man for me. And I would imagine all the ways that he could love me. And I would start falling deeply in love with this person of this imagination that I was having, right? It wasn't even a real scenario. It was just what my brain was forming because it was trying to get my emotional needs met in a safe way, right? Even though the person was actually avoidant and he wasn't showing up for me the way that I needed him to, I was deeply falling into a space of imagining that I was in love with him, okay? And like I said, this is a way for the psych to meet the need fulfillment without actually receiving it. It was the safest way that my psyche knew how to meet this need because I wasn't open to expressing my needs yet, or even open to understanding and knowing what my needs were at this time. I remember the moment that I realized that I was lacking in self love. I was having a conversation with a gentleman who I was seeing at the time occasionally. He was a using drug addict, and we were sitting outside on my front porch. And I said to him, "If you don't change, this will never work because I would never allow you around my children." And then later, I was reflecting on that, thinking back, like, why would I allow this man around me, but not my children? And that was the realization that I needed to wake up to the fact that I was not loving myself and I was not respecting my own needs. I wasn't setting standards around the type of behavior that I deserved in my life, right? I wasn't even considering my own needs at this point. I was considering my children's needs, but not my own. And this was a huge awakening for me. I realized that I had compassion for him, for my children, for everyone else except myself. And this is when the awareness seeped into my subconscious so deeply, into my conscious so deeply, that I decided that my needs do matter. And this is where change started to take place. After this experience, I decided to become abstinent. I decided to take a break from relationships because I knew that I was falling into this space of limerence where my imagination was trying to get needs met, but reality was actually reflecting back to me that my own needs didn't even matter to myself, right? So I decided, okay, I'm going to become abstinent for 1 year. 1 year, I'm going to step away from sex. Um, and men in general and just start to really work on myself. Um, that was almost 5 years ago now. So, what ended up happening in that first year was really powerful. First of all, I realized that I was outsourcing my own sense of comfort for a man to give me that sense of comfort. So the first year was really difficult because I craved being held, right? I craved someone holding me. And I ended up starting to give it to myself. I started practices where I would rock myself and touch my arms really softly. I started to massage my feet at night. I really started to give myself the love that I desired from somebody else. I started to meet my own needs. My needs started to matter. I started to become emotionally available to myself, right? Which can only eventually lead to attracting other people who are emotionally available, right? Because our reality can only ever reflect us back to us. It cannot give us more than we are. So, um, like I said, now I'm almost at 5 years abstinent, and that's because in that year, my standards started to get higher and higher. I attracted men into my reality in that year who did want to meet my sexual needs, right? But I knew that they were not up to par. If it was not somebody who I would introduce to my children, then they were not good enough for me. So that became my standard. And in the last 5 years, I have not attracted anybody who is up to um, my newest standards. So my standards just continued to get higher and higher and higher. And at this point in my life, my standard is marriage. So I believe that I am so worthy of love and affection and being chosen that my body is only available for someone who chooses me fully, wholly, and completely. So I have decided that I will not have engage in intercourse with any man unless there is a ring on my finger. So when I attract that person, I will let you guys know. Intuitively, spirit has told me 7 years. So I'm 5 years in. Seven is a really beautiful number of completion, and I've experienced a lot of sexual trauma. My stepfather sexually abused me. I've had multiple partners who were emotionally and physically abusive. I've jumped out of a moving car to get away from an alcoholic boyfriend who was attempting to beat me. I've had miscarriages, I've had abortions, so a lot of sexual trauma. So I'm willing to put in the work to heal my womb so that I can be that best version of myself and attract that best version of somebody else into my reality. So I do have a feeling that it's going to be a couple more years, and that's totally okay with me. If you would have told me that a few years ago, I probably would have freaked out. And I actually did have a little grieving experience when Spirit first told me that it was going to be 7 years. So it took me some time to accept that, but now I'm in this really deep place of um, appreciation that I'm allowing myself to have this time to heal. And I don't need somebody else in my reality validating me. I can meet my own needs, and I have beautiful friendships and relationships with my children. So there is mutual need meeting happening outside of a romantic relationship. So at this point in my life, I've built pillars of healthy relationships with other people as well, so that I don't experience so much limerence, right? My brain isn't trying to get my needs met in a fake artificial way because I am actually getting my needs met through other healthy relationships. So that desire for partnership isn't as strong as it used to be, because I'm showing up for myself these days. I've also, like through this journey of abstinence and self reclamation, I've also released a lot of other unhealthy habits, right? I created a container for no THC for myself. I've let go of nicotine. I've let go of old jobs. I started creating more wealth in my life when I started to believe that I was worthy of that. Um, I'm starting to change my food beliefs. I actually created a course, Embodied Inner Work, the belief process, which I launched today. Whoop, whoop. Well, actually, on my birthday last week, but today was our first live Zoom call. And it was such a beautiful space of just connection and witnessing and talking about the power of belief. So I'm stepping into newer and higher versions of myself through this process of self reclamation, of meeting my own needs, right? Of um, not self abandoning anymore, but showing up for myself. And that all started with believing that I was worthy of asking for what I need. And even in the process of checking into this hotel, I asked for what I need. And that's why I think it's such a really powerful title for this video of I became difficult, because with quotation marks, because we think that we're becoming difficult when we ask for what we need because we were conditioned to believe that. But the truth is, When we ask for what we need, we're actually creating this level of deep self-respect that's reflected in back into us or back from our reality as respect from the external, right? So once we have this internal sense of respect, then people externally start to respect us. And if they don't, then we immediately create a boundary around that situation and we don't go around that person, okay? But generally, that it is reflected back to us. But as I was saying, when I checked into this hotel, I specifically asked if I could be moved to the east side of the building to have a really nice city view. Okay. And she was like, "Oh, you have pool view. So let me change that really quickly." When I got to the room, I noticed that it didn't have a bathtub. So immediately I went back downstairs and she had also upgraded my room to a suite, by the way, but the suite didn't have a bathtub. It had a big shower. So I went back downstairs and I was like, "Hey, I really appreciate, you accommodating my needs and upgrading me to a suite, but I need a room that has a bathtub, so I'm gonna be need to be changed again. And I would also like a high room." And she ended up looking through it. She was like, "No problem at all. I completely understand." And she ended up looking through the hotel information, computer or whatever, and the highest room was in that I wanted with a bathtub and on the side that I wanted was only on floor 4 and the building goes up to 8. So she said, "We'll put you in this room for now." And I said, "Well, can I call tomorrow to see if there's a higher room available?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course, I'll put a note here." So because I'm open to asking for what I need, I actually get what I need. And when we're not open to asking for what we need, what ends up happening is resentment builds. And we start to have this victim mentality like, nothing ever goes my way. Nobody listens to me. I don't matter, right? That's the energy that we're carrying when we're not actually being honest about what we want and what we need. So stepping into a version of ourself that believes that our needs matter up levels us in such a way that we actually start to get what we need. Our energy is different. People start to respect us because we have a sense of self respect, right? We're showing up for ourselves, we're emotionally available to ourselves. And external validation stops really mattering because we're internally validating ourselves. Our needs matter. My needs matter, okay? And I'm allowed to speak them. I'm allowed to get my needs met. And if you have a problem with that, I'm so sorry, but your emotions are your responsibility and my emotions are my responsibility. So, like I mentioned earlier in the first section, when I was talking about that first year of being abstinent, I really started to create a new self of sense, a new sense of self worth by showing up for myself, by self-holding, self-massages, self-soothing, affirmations. My needs matter is a great one to start with. I am learning what my needs are, that bringing that permission consciousness into the space, which I teach in my belief process. Bridging that belief from my needs don't matter to my needs do matter, right? Emotionally attuning, mirroring myself, noticing when emotions were arising, and listening to what my emotions were telling me. All of these things start to build that sense of self worth within. It all starts within. So, um, a few other affirmations that I used were, "I am worthy just because I exist." And the standard I accept from others mirrors the standard I hold with myself. realizing that all relationships stem from the relationship I have with myself. Just looking through my notes over here. They're on my computer today since I'm in this beautiful hotel room, which, by the way, I went on a whale watching expo last night on this big, beautiful boat. Um, and it was such an amazing experience. We literally witnessed 5 different whales and, like, thousands of dolphins and sea lions. The lady who was the naturalist who was, like, conveying, messages and over the intercom on the boat actually said it was one of the top 5 trips that she's been on this whole year. So and it's interesting because yesterday, during work, I was talking to my coworker about it, and she started going into the negative about how she had went out on one and they didn't see any whales, and, like, I did not take that reality on at all. I instantly expressed to her, "I'm holding the vision that we're going to see whales," and it ended up being one of the best trips this naturalist has ever seen in her life, and I truly believe it's because of the belief I was holding around the trip, right? Like I said, our beliefs create our reality. And when we are holding the highest vision, it's more possible that that will actually be reflected back to us. So I had the most amazing trip last night um, with dolphins and whales. And oh, and I actually brought my Lumerian deck with me. And this is the card that I pulled right when I got on the boat, which was really synchronistic because I led my first Zoom class today, right? It says, let go of fear to jump into love. Let go beyond attachments. And the dolphins that were on the boat, they were literally playing like this. Um, and they were just so naturally in their love vibration. It was just a beautiful reflection of the vibration that I'm starting to step into. So I was really grateful that my reality was reflecting that back to me. Um, yeah, and I will say this, like, there were a couple resources that really helped me. One specifically, was nonviolent communication. It really helped me to identify my needs, and to ask for them in the most compassionate way possible, because just because I wanted to start meeting my own needs doesn't mean that I wanted to step into a version of myself that was rude or, um mean or selfish, right? Like, this is a co-creation process. Like, this is about mutual need meeting. Um, so the book Nonviolent Communication was recommended to me by one of my mentors, and it has been deeply transformative for my communication. And it really helped me bridge that gap between my needs are selfish and my needs matter, right? And it also helped me identify, like, what are my needs, because when we haven't been honoring them for most of our life, then sometimes we just need that extra little push to help identify what they are. And this book was a huge resource for me, so hopefully it's helpful for you. um, it really helped me understand that, like, healthy people actually appreciate clarity. Um, and, people who can't meet my needs are generally people who are not the healthiest, right? And people who I probably don't want to interact with too much. Okay. So, I am going to close this with reminder that you are allowed to want more. Owning that is actually how we start to attract more. You are allowed to communicate clearly, and we can learn the skills to do this. You are allowed to take up space, right? You are worthy just because you exist. You are divine creation and you matter. Your needs matter, okay? And as soon as you begin to recognize that, so will the rest of the world. You matter. And even if people label you difficult, this is how we become self respecting. Okay. This is how we start to attract everything into our life that we deserve, that we desire, that is up to par with our standards. So, the moment I stopped abandoning myself was the moment my entire life changed. The goal was never to become harder, it was to become whole, integrated, embodied. And if I can do it, so can you. I love you so, so much. We have conversations like this each week. And if you resonate, I hope to see you there. I would love, love, love for more people to join live so that they can ask questions. I am a 3-5 manifester. So my human design type is um, learning through experience and gaining wisdom through experience and then sharing that experience with others. I have a right angle cross of explanation. So I'm really good at breaking things down um, on a grounded level, like bringing high level concepts into the earth, into the body, into the 3D realm. So, anyways, I hope to see you in the next one. I love you so, so much. Goodbye from California.